London, September 6th, 1997. A gun carriage moves slowly through the streets. The wheels turn at the pace of a walk. On top of the carriage is a coffin draped in the royal standard. On top of the coffin, there are 3 wreaths of white flowers, and tucked inside one of them is a single white envelope. On the front of the envelope, in a child's handwriting, is one word: Mummy. Behind the carriage, 5 men walk: a duke, 2 earls, and 2 boys. One of them is 15 years old, the other is 12. They are wearing dark suits. They are keeping their eyes forward. The streets on either side of them are packed with people, millions of them, crying, throwing flowers, calling out her name, and the cameras are everywhere, broadcasting this image to an estimated 2.5 billion people around the world. The 1-2-year-old walks with his head slightly bowed. His hands are clasped in front of him. His face gives almost nothing away, almost. But if you watch the footage carefully, you can see it. The slight stiffening of his jaw, the way his eyes move to the ground and then back up. He is not a prince right now. He is a boy at his mother's funeral, and he is doing what he was told to do. He is keeping it together. He is performing. The question that nobody answered that day, and that would take years to even begin to be understood, is what that performance cost him. Her name was Diana Frances Spencer. She was the most photographed woman in the world for nearly 2 decades. She was a princess, a style icon, a humanitarian, a tabloid obsession, and, by every account that matters, a mother who loved her 2 sons with everything she had. She called them her most precious achievements. She broke royal protocol again and again to make their lives feel normal. She took them to McDonald's. She took them to Disney World. She had sleepovers at Kensington Palace for their school friends. She hugged them in public at a time when public displays of physical affection were not part of the royal script. And then, on August 31st, 1997, she was gone. This is a story about what happened after. It is a story about 2 boys who lost their mother in the most public way possible. About the man who shaped that interview that changed the course of her last years. About the brother who tried to protect her and watched it fall apart anyway. About the people closest to Diana who had to figure out, without any kind of roadmap, how to keep living after she was gone. William, Harry, Martin Bashir, Earl Spencer. 4 people. 4 very different stories. And one woman at the center of all of them, who cannot tell her own.
Stop. Don't scroll past this. What you're about to watch has been buried for centuries. Lost, forgotten, hidden in plain sight. Most people walk past these walls every day and feel nothing. But you clicked. Which means somewhere deep inside you, you already knew there was more to the story. And there is. Every crack, every stone, every shadow on these ancient walls whispers a secret the history books never told you. Welcome to Ancient Walls, where the past doesn't just speak, it screams. Now, sit back, turn up your volume, because what comes next will change the way you see the world forever.
Chapter 1. The World She Built. To understand what those boys walked into on September 6th, 1997, you have to understand what they were walking away from. And to understand that, you have to understand the world their mother had built for them, and the world that kept trying to take it apart. Diana arrived in the public eye in 1980. She was 19 years old. She was a kindergarten teaching assistant. She was shy in the way that people who are not actually shy sometimes appear when they are overwhelmed. The engagement to Prince Charles was announced on February 24th, 1981. The wedding was on July 29th of the same year. 750 million people watched it on television. She was 20 years old on her wedding day. The marriage was in serious trouble within a few years. By the mid-1980s, Charles had resumed his relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana later said that she knew about it from very early on. She said she confronted Camilla at a party in 1989. She said she spent years feeling completely alone inside the institution she had married into. What is striking about the way Diana talked about this period is how much of her pain she connected directly to what it meant for her children. She was not worried primarily about herself. She was worried about what William and Harry were absorbing, about what kind of marriage they were watching, about what kind of institution was surrounding them. She did everything she could to counterbalance it. She was determined that her boys would understand real life in a way that previous generations of royals had not. She arranged for William to visit a homeless shelter when he was a teenager. She made sure Harry knew how to cook at least basic meals. She insisted on long summer holidays where the rules relaxed and it was just her and her boys and something as close to ordinary as a princess could manufacture. She also knew, even then, that she was living against a clock she could not see. She knew that the institution would outlast her. She knew that Charles would remarry. She knew that her influence over her sons would eventually be diluted by advisors, by protocol, by the sheer gravitational pull of the crown. So she made the time she had count. She made it physical and present and real. She held their hands. She pulled them close. She left marks on them that the institution could not entirely erase, though it would try. The price of that world was visibility. Constant, relentless visibility. The cameras were outside her apartment. The cameras were at the school gates. The cameras were at the beach. The cameras were everywhere. And her children grew up inside that visibility, with no real understanding of what it meant to live outside it. That visibility would ultimately swallow her. But before it did, it gave her something. It gave her a platform. And in November 1995, she used it in a way that shocked the entire world. The interview that changed everything, and the man who made it happen through means that would not be fully understood for more than 25 years. Chapter 2. The Interview. Martin Bashir was a journalist at the BBC. In 1995, he was not particularly famous. He was ambitious, and he was looking for a story that would make his name. He found his way to Diana through her brother, Charles Spencer, the 9th Earl Spencer. What Bashir told Earl Spencer, and what Earl Spencer later said he believed at the time, was that Diana was being surveilled by her own security services, that she was being monitored, that people around her were selling information about her movements to newspapers. To persuade Earl Spencer that this was true, Bashir showed him bank statements. The statements appeared to show payments from a tabloid newspaper to a man who worked on the Spencer family estate. They suggested a pattern of surveillance and betrayal. Earl Spencer was alarmed. He trusted Bashir. He arranged an introduction to his sister. The bank statements were forged. A graphic designer named Matt Weisler later confirmed that he had created false documents at Bashir's request. Weisler said he was told they would only be used as samples, not as actual evidence to deceive anyone. They were used to deceive Diana's own brother into handing over access to his sister. The interview happened on November 5th, 1995. Diana sat in a chair in a room at Kensington Palace. She wore minimal makeup. She spoke quietly and directly. She told 23 million viewers that she had suffered from bulimia, that she had self-harmed, that she had been deeply unhappy, that there were 3 people in her marriage. And she said, about whether Charles should be king, that she thought the position of monarch required stability, and she questioned whether he wanted it. The world stopped. The Panorama interview remains one of the most watched television events in British history. It was sold around the world. It shifted public sympathy toward Diana in a way that had permanent consequences for the monarchy. Queen Elizabeth II wrote to both Diana and Charles shortly afterward, recommending that they divorce. The divorce was finalized on August 28, 996. By every account, Diana believed the interview had been the right thing to do. She believed she had finally told her truth. She did not know, could not have known, what Bashir had done to make it happen. The BBC commissioned an internal inquiry at the time. That inquiry found no evidence of wrongdoing. That finding was, at best, inadequate. At worst, it was a cover-up. Because in 2020, Earl Spencer went public with what he knew, and the BBC commissioned a new independent inquiry led by Lord Dyson, a former Supreme Court justice. The Dyson report was published in May 2021. It found that Bashir had used deceitful methods to obtain the interview. It found that the BBC's 1,996 investigation had been flawed and that the corporation had covered up what it knew. It found that a senior BBC executive had seen Matt Weissler's mock-up documents and had chosen not to pursue the matter further. And it found something else. Lord Dyson's report noted that, while it was impossible to say for certain what would have happened without the forged documents, the deception had likely contributed to Diana's decision to agree to the interview. She had been manipulated into the most consequential media appearance of her life. Earl Spencer said something in public that has stayed with many people who followed the story closely. He said he believed that Bashir's manipulation had contributed directly to Diana's increasing isolation and paranoia in her final years. That the deception had reinforced her fear that the people around her could not be trusted. That it had made her more vulnerable, not less. The interview intended to give her a voice may have been the thing that narrowed her world. Bashir resigned from the BBC in 2021, citing health reasons, before the Dyson report was published. He issued an apology of sorts, saying he was deeply sorry and that the documents should never have been shown to Earl Spencer. He did not accept that they had fundamentally shaped the outcome. Matt Weissler, the graphic designer who made the fake documents and who had tried to report what he knew back in 1996, had been quietly blacklisted from BBC work after he raised concerns. He spent years trying to be heard. The Dyson report acknowledged his account. It came 25 years late. Chapter 3. The Brother. Charles Edward Maurice Spencer, the 9th Earl Spencer, the man who read Diana's funeral eulogy, the brother who tried to protect her and spent years afterward living with what had happened. He was born on May 20th, 1964, at Park House, on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk. He was Diana's younger brother by 3 years. Their early childhood was shaped by one thing above everything else: the departure of their mother. Francis Spencer left the family home when Charles was 6 years old. He later said it was the defining event of his childhood. He and Diana were raised primarily by their father, Johnny Spencer, the 8th Earl Spencer. They were close in the particular way that siblings who share a wound become close. They understood something about each other that no one else entirely could. Charles was educated at Eton and then at Magdalen College, Oxford. He worked as a journalist in the United States for NBC News for a period in the early 1990s. In 1992, he inherited the earldom on the death of his father. He became the custodian of Althorpe, the Spencer family estate in Northamptonshire, one of the finest private houses in England. He and Diana stayed close throughout her marriage and through the increasingly difficult years that followed. He was one of the few people she genuinely trusted, which is exactly why what Bashir did to gain access to her worked so completely. When Bashir showed Earl Spencer those forged bank statements in 1995, they appeared to confirm what Charles already feared, that his sister was being watched, that people around her were selling her out, that she was surrounded by people who could not be trusted. The deception was not random. It was precision-targeted at the specific anxiety that a protective older brother would feel about a vulnerable younger sister in an impossible situation. He made the introduction to Bashir in good faith. He has said, publicly and in detail, that he has lived with that ever since. The moment Diana died, Charles Spencer stepped onto the world stage in a way he had never done before. He flew to Paris with Prince Charles and Diana's two sisters to bring the body home. He was present for all of it. And on September 6th, 1997, he stood in Westminster Abbey and delivered a eulogy that remains one of the most remarkable pieces of public oratory in modern British history. He addressed the congregation. He addressed the television cameras. He addressed the royal family, sitting a few rows in front of him, and he did not look away from what he needed to say. He spoke about Diana's innate nobility. He pledged, publicly, that the Spencer family would ensure that William and Harry's souls were not simply immersed by duty and tradition. He looked at the institution that had surrounded his sister for 16 years and told it, in front of 2.5 billion people, that it would not do the same to her boys. The crowd outside the Abbey, listening on speakers in the streets, began to applaud. The applause moved inside the building. It rippled through the pews. Some of the royals remained still. Some did not. It was the most defiant thing anyone said publicly in the days after Diana's death. In the years that followed, Charles Spencer rebuilt Althorpe. He opened it to the public. He established a museum to his sister there. Diana is buried on a small island in the center of the lake on the estate, surrounded by trees. The island is called the Round Oval. It is peaceful and private and completely inaccessible to the general public. He gave her somewhere quiet. He could not give her that while she was alive. He did it afterward. He married 3 times. He has 7 children. He has spent years as a public advocate for better mental health support and has spoken openly about the trauma of losing Diana. He has also spent years trying to understand what happened with Bashir and why it took so long for the truth to come out. When the Dyson Report was published in 2021, Earl Spencer did not celebrate. He released a statement. He said the BBC's failures had been known to many people for a long time. He said the corporation had tried to whitewash what happened. And he said the thing that has not left people since, that what Bashir did may have hastened his sister's death. Not directly, not in any simple causal chain, but in the way that a series of small betrayals can erode a person's ability to trust, to reach out, to build the kinds of connections that keep people safe. Charles Spencer is the person who opened the door. He has spent nearly 3 decades knowing that. Chapter 4. The Heir. William Arthur Philip Louis, Prince William, born June 21st, 1982, at St. Mary's Hospital, Paddington, London. The eldest son, the heir, the boy who would one day be king, and the 5-year-old who stood behind his mother's coffin and kept his eyes forward and did not break. He was born into a marriage that was already complicated. Charles and Diana had been married for barely a year when William arrived. The public celebration of his birth was enormous. Diana later said that Charles's first reaction on seeing their son was to note that he had red hair. It was not the response she had hoped for. From the beginning, Diana was determined to mother William differently from the way royal children had historically been mothered. She breastfed him herself. She insisted on being hands-on in ways that went against royal convention. When Charles and Diana went on an official tour of Australia and New Zealand in 1983, they took 9-month-old William with them rather than leaving him behind, which was the expected thing to do. William's early years were shaped by 2 things running in parallel: a mother who was warm and physical and present, and a household that was increasingly tense, fractured, and unhappy in ways children absorb without being able to name. By the time William was 10, his parents' marriage was effectively over as a functioning unit. In December 1992, Prime Minister John Major announced their formal separation in the House of Commons. William was 10 years and 6 months old. He would have been aware of it. He could not have been unaware. Diana later said that she sat William down and tried to explain what was happening before the announcement was made. She wanted him to hear it from her, not from a television. She said the conversation was one of the hardest things she had ever done. He was enrolled at Eton College in September 1995. Eton is 20 miles from London, close enough to Kensington Palace, but distant enough to give him something like a separate life. Diana drove him there herself on the first day. She was photographed waving goodbye in the car park. She described the drive home as one of the loneliest journeys she had ever made. He was 13 years old when the Panorama interview aired in November 1995. He was at school. He watched it. What he made of it at the time has never been fully recorded, but in later years he made clear that the interview troubled him deeply. He felt that the most private aspects of his family's life had been exposed in a way he did not have a choice about. He was 13, and his mother had just told 23 million people about the state of his parents' marriage. On August 31st, 1997, William was at Balmoral Castle in Scotland with his father, his brother, his grandparents, and several other members of the royal household. He was 15. He had spent much of the summer moving between his parents' separate worlds. He had last seen his mother 12 days earlier. The news came in the early hours of the morning. There had been a car crash in Paris. Diana was injured. And then, not long after that, Diana was gone. What happened next is something William has never described in full. He has given fragments. He has said that his father came to tell him. He has said that he found it impossible to process. He has described the days that followed as a kind of blur. What is on the public record is what happened 7 days later. He put on a dark suit. He went outside. He walked. The procession from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey covered 1.8 miles. It took approximately 35 minutes. The crowds on either side numbered in the hundreds of thousands. For 35 minutes, William walked behind his mother's coffin in front of more than 2 billion people and kept his face arranged into something that would not embarrass anyone. He was 15 years old. The immediate years after Diana's death were managed largely by the palace. William returned to Eton. He was protected, to a degree, by the structure of school life. He had friends. He had routines. He had the privacy that Eton's walls and protocols afforded. He had his father and his grandparents and a network of household staff who were, by most accounts, genuinely fond of him. He had everything except the thing he had lost. He did not speak publicly about his grief. Not then, and not for a very long time. In 2001, he went to the University of St. Andrews in Scotland to study art history, later switching to geography. It was there that he met Catherine Middleton. She was in the same student residence in his first year. They became friends. They became more than friends. The years at university were, by his own account, among the happiest of his adult life. He was relatively anonymous. He could go to the student union. He could walk to the pub. He could have a conversation that was not being recorded or reported. He held on to that for as long as he could. He and Catherine married on April 29, 2011, at Westminster Abbey, the same building where, 14 years earlier, he had sat in the front pew at his mother's funeral. 1,900 people attended. 2 billion people watched. He has spoken, in measured and careful ways, about what it has meant to grow up the way he did. He has said that he did not grieve properly after his mother died. He has said that he threw himself into work and duty and forward motion, the way the institution required him to. He has said that it caught up with him in his late 20s and early 30s, that there were periods of significant difficulty. He became a patron of Heads Together, the mental health charity launched in 2016 alongside his wife Catherine and his brother Harry. He has spoken in public about the importance of talking about difficult emotions, about not letting things build up, about seeking help. He has done it in the careful way of a man who knows everything he says will be scrutinized, but he has done it. He became the Prince of Wales in September 2022, on the death of Queen Elizabeth II. His father became King Charles III. William became heir apparent. The succession that had always been coming arrived. He is now the future king of England. He is married with 3 children. He is the head of a household that is everything the one he grew up in was not, at least in the ways that matter. He and Catherine have spoken openly about making sure their children have emotional language, about being present, about not letting duty be the only language spoken in their home. He has built the life his mother wanted for him. He has built it in the institution she struggled inside of. Both of those things are true at the same time. William's story is one of quiet survival performed in the most visible place in the world. Chapter 5. The Spare. Henry Charles, Albert David, Prince Harry. Born September 15th, 1984, at St. Mary's Hospital, Paddington, London. The second son, the Spare, the 1-2-year-old with his head slightly bowed, the man who eventually said out loud what almost no one in his position had ever said before. He was born 2 years and 3 months after William. Diana said she was delighted to have a second son. She said she had hoped for a girl, but that the moment she saw Harry, she could not imagine it any other way. His early childhood was, in the years before the marriage broke apart completely, marked by his mother's fierce and specific attention. Diana treated her 2 boys differently in one important way. William was being prepared, always and explicitly, for what he would one day become. Harry had no such preparation. Harry had more room. He was the one who could, within limits, be himself. He was louder than William. He was more instinctive and more physical. He was the one more likely to do the thing that wasn't planned. Diana seemed to love this about him. She called him her little boy. He called her Mummy. He was 8 years old when his parents formally separated. He was 10 when the Panorama interview aired in November 1995. He was at school at Ludgrove. He did not watch it as it aired. Diana had told the headmaster what was coming and asked that the boys not see it in real time. Harry found out about it the way children find out about things they are not supposed to know yet, through fragments, through other children, through the particular way that adults behave when they are trying to keep something from you. He was 12 on August 31st, 1997. He has said that he was woken up by his father, that Charles came to his room in Balmoral in the early hours of the morning, that Charles sat on the edge of his bed, and that Charles told him his mother was dead. He has said that there was no counselor present, no support person, no one whose job was to sit with a 1-2-year-old boy and help him understand what had just happened. His father told him. His father held him, briefly. And then his father left the room. Harry has said that he remembers not being able to cry, that the information entered his mind but seemed unable to attach itself to anything. He has used the word numb. He has used the phrase going through the motions. He has said that he did not fully understand what had happened for several days, perhaps longer. 7 days after he was told, he put on a dark suit, he went outside, he walked. He has said, and these are some of the most striking things he has said publicly about any of this, that walking behind his mother's coffin in front of billions of people was not something he was given a choice about. He has said that he understood even then that it was expected of him. He has said that he did what he was trained to do, which was to keep his feelings private and keep moving forward and not do anything that would embarrass the family or the institution. He was 12 years old. He did all of that. He did it in front of the entire world. He did not stop doing it for roughly 15 years. After Diana's death, Harry was raised primarily within the palace system, by his father and by his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. He was enrolled at Eton, as William had been. He was looked after. He was protected in the particular way that the institution protects its members, which is to say, from the outside, thoroughly, and from the inside, not quite enough. He struggled at Eton in ways that William had not. His grades were not strong. He described feeling in those years that he was falling behind in a way he could not quite articulate. He made friends. He was charming and energetic and funny in the way that people who are in pain sometimes are in social settings. But something was not being addressed. In 2002, he was involved in a cannabis and alcohol incident that became public. He was 17 years old. His father arranged for him to visit a drug rehabilitation center for a single day to understand what serious drug and alcohol problems looked like. The intent was probably good. The execution was widely criticized. It felt performative in a way that did not match the seriousness of what Harry was actually going through. He scraped through his A-levels with results that were unremarkable. He declined to go to university. He joined the British Army instead, which turned out to be one of the things that actually helped him. Not because the Army is a place of great emotional openness, it is not, but because it provided structure, purpose, and a community in which his status was irrelevant. In the Army, he was a soldier. He could be evaluated on what he could do, not on who he was born. He deployed to Afghanistan twice. The first time, in 2007 and 2008, had to be cut short after 10 weeks, when his presence in the combat zone was reported by an Australian magazine, and the story broke internationally. He was withdrawn immediately because his presence was considered to create unacceptable risk for the soldiers around him. He was furious and deeply disappointed. The second deployment, in 2012 and 2013, lasted 20 weeks. He flew Apache helicopters in combat. By every account from people who served with him, he was a serious and capable soldier. The Army years gave him something he had not had before, a sense of his own competence that had nothing to do with his family name. It did not fix everything. It did not come close to fixing everything, but it gave him a foothold. What was still not being addressed, and would not be properly addressed for a long time, was what had happened on September 15th of 1997. The morning his father told him his mother was dead, and then left the room. Harry has said that he went the better part of 2 decades without speaking to anyone about his mother's death in any real way. He described a process of emotional shutting down that was so thorough he was barely aware of it while it was happening. He was not depressed in the way that people sometimes imagine depression from the outside, visibly and continuously. He was functional. He was active. He was photographed laughing at polo matches and nightclubs and official engagements. He looked, from the outside, like someone who was fine. He was not fine. In his late 20s, the thing he had been suppressing for nearly 20 years began to surface. He has described a period of approximately 2 years, from roughly 2012 to 2014, during which he was in serious psychological difficulty. He was experiencing panic attacks and extreme anxiety, and a level of anger that frightened him. He could not understand where it was coming from. He eventually, with the encouragement of his brother William, sought professional help. He started therapy, and in therapy, he began for the first time to actually process what had happened when he was 12 years old. He has said that the grief he had never allowed himself to feel had not disappeared, it had compressed, it had become pressure, and when he finally started doing the work to understand it, the scale of what had been stored there was staggering. He met Meghan Markle in 2016, on a blind date arranged by a mutual friend. She was an American actress, best known for her role in the legal drama Suits. She was divorced. She was biracial. She was, in essentially every respect, unlike the women who had been considered appropriate partners for British princes in the past. They were engaged in November 2017. They married on May 19, 2018, at Windsor Castle. 29.2 million people in the United Kingdom watched on television. Another 100,000 lined the streets. What happened in the years that followed has been covered extensively, debated endlessly, and framed in every possible way depending on who is telling it. What is not in dispute is this. Harry and Meghan found their position within the royal family untenable. In January 2020, they announced that they were stepping back from senior royal duties. In February 2021, they confirmed that they were not returning. They have since settled in California with their 2 children, Archie and Lilibet. Harry has been more publicly open about his interior life than any member of the royal family in history. He wrote a memoir, published in January 2023, titled Spare. In it, he described the morning his father told him his mother was dead. He described the walk behind the coffin. He described the years of numbness and the years of suppression and the crisis in his late 20s and the therapy that began to change things. He described his father, not with hatred, but with a specific and careful sorrow. He said Charles had given him what he could. He said Charles had been shaped by his own upbringing in ways that made emotional openness difficult. He said he understood that. He also said it was not enough. That a 1-2-year-old boy being told his mother was dead without any support present was not enough. And that being expected to continue with royal duties immediately afterward was not enough. He said it clearly. He said it without adjectives. He said it in the language of a person who has spent a long time in therapy learning how to name things accurately. He is 41 years old. He lives in Montecito, California. He has 2 children who call him Dad. He is doing, to the extent that anyone can tell from the outside, the work. Harry's story is one of learning, very late and in public, how to grieve. Chapter 6. The weight they carried. Now pull back. Look at all of them together. William, Harry, Earl Spencer, and at the edges of it, Martin Bashir, still somewhere in the shadows of this story even after the Dyson report. The weight that comes with being close to Diana is a particular kind of weight. It is not simply the grief of losing someone. It is the grief of losing someone in a way that was watched and documented and archived and replayed and debated for decades afterward. They did not just lose her, they lost her in front of everyone, and they have had to continue losing her in front of everyone. Every time the footage is replayed, every time an anniversary arrives, every time someone writes another book or makes another documentary. For William, the answer has been containment. He built the most conventional possible life inside the most unconventional possible institution, and he has made it work. He is the future king. He is Catherine's husband. He is George and Charlotte and Louis' father. He has done what his mother wanted for him, which was to be a whole person, while also doing what the institution requires of him, which is to be a symbol. He holds both. It costs him something. It has always cost him something. For Harry, the answer has been rupture. He decided that the cost of containment was too high. He decided that his mental health and his family's safety and his own ability to function as a human being required him to leave the system he had been born into. Whether that decision was right or wrong is not for anyone outside his situation to say. What it unquestionably was brave in the specific way that saying the true thing out loud when the true thing is dangerous is brave. For Earl Spencer, the answer has been custodianship. He keeps his sister's grave. He maintains Althorpe. He speaks publicly when he needs to speak publicly, and steps back when that is what the situation requires. He carries the knowledge of what happened with Bashir. He has never stopped carrying it. He turned it into action when he could, and he waited when waiting was what was needed. For Martin Bashir, the answer has been silence. He issued his statement. He said he was sorry. And then he disappeared. The Dyson report was published. The BBC apologized. The then Director General Tim Davie said the corporation should have been more rigorous in 1996. Matt Weissler was finally acknowledged. And Bashir was gone. What they all share is the experience of being permanently altered by a single moment. The moment when Diana was still alive, and then, without warning, was not. None of them chose to be in proximity to that loss. 3 of them loved her. None of them have come out of it unchanged. None of them were given any instructions for what to do next. They figured it out, or they didn't, as best they could. The small specific detail that captures all of it is the envelope. The white envelope tucked into the wreath on top of Diana's coffin. The one with the word mummy written on the front in a child's handwriting. It was Harry who wrote it. He has spoken about it. He said that he and William were encouraged to write letters to place with the flowers. That he did not know what to write. That in the end, he wrote the one word that he knew. Mummy. Full stop. That was all. Chapter 7. The Laugh. There is one detail about Diana that does not get discussed very much in the coverage of her life, which is how funny she was. Not publicly funny, not the performing for cameras funny that sometimes appeared in interviews, privately funny. The people who knew her, and knew her well, often mention it first. She did impressions. She was particularly good at impressions of other royals. She made her sons cry laughing at the dining table. She had a sense of the absurdity of her own situation that was sharp and dark and unsparing. Harry mentioned it in his memoir. He mentioned a specific kind of laugh she had when something struck her as genuinely hilarious, not politely amusing, but actually funny. He said that hearing a certain kind of laugh from someone else could, even years later, catch him off guard. That laugh does not appear in any documentary footage. It does not appear in any of the famous photographs. It was the thing she gave specifically to the people who were closest to her, and the people who were closest to her are the only ones who can still hear it. William and Harry grew up with that laugh. Earl Spencer knew that laugh, and on September 6th, 1997, when the cameras were on all of them, and the weight of the entire world seemed to be pressing down on every person in that procession, it was probably the last thing any of them were thinking about. But it is also, in a way, the only thing that truly belongs to them. The grief was shared with 2.5 billion people. The laugh was theirs. It still is. Chapter 8. Still walking. The image at the beginning of this story, those two boys walking behind a gun carriage through London, looks different now than it did then. It looked, to many people watching in 1997, like a display of royal stoicism. Two princes maintaining dignity in impossibly difficult circumstances. What it actually was a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old doing what they had been asked to do by adults who genuinely believed this was the right thing. Doing it in front of more people than either of them could conceptually process. Doing it in the only way they knew how. It took one of them more than 2 decades to properly understand what that day cost him. The other is still, in certain ways, figuring it out. Neither of them chose that walk. Neither of them got to say goodbye in private before they were required to say goodbye in front of the world. That is the thing this story has been reaching toward, and it cannot be wrapped up neatly, because it is not a neat story. It is the story of a family, and like all families, it contains things that cannot be fully resolved. Love and failure and silence and damage and the particular ongoing difficulty of being human in circumstances that were never designed with being human in mind. Diana is buried on an island in a lake at Althorpe, surrounded by trees, and the lake is quiet, and the island cannot be reached. Her sons are still walking. The world has always told Diana's story through the marriages, the fashions, the feuds, and the final night in Paris. This video told a different story. The story of the boys who walked behind her coffin. The brother who opened a door he did not know was a trap. The journalist who built a career on a foundation of forged paper. And the question, still open after nearly 3 decades, of what the people who loved Diana are still carrying. That is the story worth sitting with. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more fascinating stories.